Alrighty, so let's begin with this question. We got to check the boxes, the questions associated with it, and accordingly we'll be answering the statements, that is yes or no. I'll go one step back once again so that you can have a look. So this is the question. Please feel free to pause this video and read the question carefully, and then we'll be answering. Let's first move on to statement 1. So statement 1, if we look, dev user E can create a storage account in app RG. Let's go back. So if we look at this, the storage account contributor role at app RG scope allows creation and management of storage account. Therefore, we'll mark this as yes. Now let's move on to statement 2. Statement 2 says dev user A can modify the DNS settings of VM NIC 1. So dev user A has a reader access to app RG, which includes VM NIC 1. Reader role is read only and doesn't permit any kind of modification, we know. Therefore, for B, it will be no, because reader role cannot modify, right? It says can modify, which is just the opposite, so it should be no. Now let's read statement 3. Statement 3 says dev user A can configure sec group 1 to allow traffic to VM NIC 1. If you look here, dev user A has contributor access to sec group 01, which allows them to modify NSG rules since sec group 1 is linked to VM NIC 01. Changes will affect traffic flow to it. Therefore, the answer is yes for it. We'll log this as the right answers. Alright, now let's tackle this question. So here we got the statements. I'll move back to page 1 so that you can have a read at the question. So please feel free to pause this and read this. Now let's read statement 1. Statement 1 says depth RG has the depth tag finance tag assigned. Depth RG has only has the environment tag production assigned. If we look here, depth RG environment tag production, which is assigned via tag policy. There is no mention of department tag finance being applied to department RG if you look here, right? So therefore the answer is no. Now let's move to box 2 or statement 2. Statement 2 says file store A has the following tags assigned: depth tag finance, depth tag lake data lake, and sec tag encrypted. If we look here, file store A, because its question is asking for file store A, that is depth tag finance, which is this one, then depth tag data lake, app tag data lake looks good, then sec tag encrypted looks good. We can mark this as yes because all three are there. Now let's move on to statement 3. Statement 3 says netzone A has the department tag finance and app tag vnet tags assigned only. So if you look here, netzone A, which is here, has exactly 2 tags. If you look, that is depth tag finance, which is this one, and app tag vnet, which is this one. No additional tags are listed. Therefore this statement is again true. We'll mark this as yes. All right, now we got this question. Please read this question carefully. And here we go with the statements. The first statement is fin VM1 can be backed up using fin policy. So if we look here, fin VM1 with a Windows server can use fin policy because standard policies in recovery service vaults support Windows virtual machines. Hence the answer is yes. Now let's move to statement 2, that is dev VM2 can be backed up using dev policy. Let's go to dev VM2. So dev VM2 cannot use dev policy since the policy type is not applicable. If we look here, the dev policy, it clearly says not applicable here, making it invalid for VM backup. So this statement is no. Now let's move on to dev VM2 can be backed up using fin policy X. So dev VM2 with trusted launch can use fin policy X because enhanced policies in recovery service vaults supports secure Linux virtual machine. Hence the answer is yes. We'll log this as our final answers. Alright, now let's look at this question. So statement 1 says if you deploy a new virtual machine into RG app on November 2, 2025, will admin ops alert appear? The alert processing rule only affects the delivery of notifications, not the visibility or existence of the alert rule itself. Therefore, the answer is yes. Now let's move to statement 2. Statement 2 says if you deploy a new virtual machine into RG app, that is RG app is this resource group, on November 3, 2025, will AG notifications send an email? If you look here, the pause during maintenance alert processing rule is active on November 3 as per the question here, and here it says the active period as November 1 and November 4, right? So November 3 is not listed here, so therefore the answer is no. Now let's move on to the last statement. It says if you remove a managed disk from RG app on November 4, 2025, will AG notification send an email? Even though the removal of a disk is an administrative operation that matches the alert condition, the notification is suppressed. That being said, the answer is no. We'll log this as our final answers. Alright, now let's look at this question. Please pause this video to read this question carefully. And we got the statements here. Please have a look at these statements. I'll go back one step back so that you can have a look at this carefully. Let's move to option or the statement 1. Statement 1 says can Alice sign in to VM web VM? So we got to focus on wherever Alice is there in the questions, right? So and web VM is here. Web VM is app infra RG. App infra RG is in core sub A. So Alice can manage virtual machine configuration under management group A, but she can't sign in without the virtual machine user login role. So the answer is no. Now let's move to statement 2. Statement 2 says can Ben manage disk and snapshots of data VM? So Ben can manage disk and snapshots of data VM because if we look at this table, because Ben is having virtual machine contributor role at core sub B, which is the scope which covers the full resource scope. Therefore the answer is yes. Now let's move to statement 3. It says can Clara manage disk and snapshot of web VM? Let's focus on Clara. So Clara can manage disk and snapshots of web VM again because of her virtual machine contributor role, just like Ben, right? At app infra RG, which covers the virtual machines resource group as well. Therefore the answer is yes. We'll log this as our final answers. All right, now let's look at this question. Please feel free to pause this video to have a look what the question is all about. Let's look at the statements. We got the statements here. I'll go one step back once again so that you can have a read here. So statement 1 says infra lead 1 must answer the following question during the self-service password reset. In which city was your first job? So if we look at the table here, infra lead 1 lacks security questions because it's no here, right? So cannot be prompted with 1 during reset. So for 1, this is no. Now let's move to statement 2. Says analyst 2 must answer the following question during the self-service password reset. What is your favorite food? So if you look at the table, analyst 2 has security questions enabled as yes, that is the security questions are configured. So maybe asked this during reset. So therefore the answer is yes. Now let's move to statement 3. It says analyst 2 must answer the following question during the self-service password reset. What was the name of your first pet? Which is the this one. So again, just like the last one, analyst 2 has valid security questions, making this prompt possible during a reset. So therefore the answer is yes. Again, we'll log this as our final answers. Okay, now let's look at this brainstorming yes or no statements. The question is in one page, which is easy to look at. Option statement 1 says on March 10, 2025, web portal will have only one backup in storage. This statement is false because web portal, if we look here, will not have only one backup. It's mentioned only one backup. Rather, it will have multiple copies, because if we look here on March 10, because daily backups with is having 10 days retention, which preserves multiple copies. Therefore, the answer is no. Now let's move to statement 2. It says on April 1, 2025, you can access the data hub test slot backup taken on March 10, 2025. So here we have the data hub. So we can access the data hub test slot backup from March 10 on April 1, since it's within the 30 days retention window. If you just calculate, that is add 30 to it, it will be under 30 days, right? So therefore the answer is yes. Now let's move to statement 3. It says on March 10, 2025, you can restore the backup taken on March 1 to the data hub test slot. So we can restore the March 1 backup to data hub test slot on March 10 because it's still retained and restoration to test slots is supported. Therefore the answer is yes. Again, we'll log this as our final answers. Alrighty, let's look at this question. Please read this question. Please also feel free to pause this video to read the question at your own pace. And these are the statements what we need to tackle now. So statement 1 says from app vm1 web server 1 corp.local resolves to this IP. So if we look here, app VM cannot resolve web server 1 corp local because it uses Azure DNS, which doesn't query custom DNS zones. Therefore the answer is no. If you look here, app VM1, it says virtual network A, and the net A uses default Azure DNS as mentioned previously. So therefore the statement is no. Now let's move on to statement 2. Statement 2 says from app VM2 web server 1 corp local resolves to this IP. Now let's move on to the first here. So we got app VM 2 So app VM2 is where it's in the virtual net B. And where is virtual net vnet B, net B? Net B and C, if we look, use custom DNS server. So therefore VM app VM2 can resolve web server 2 corp local because it shares the app VM2 can resolve web server 1 corp local, since it uses the custom DNS server configured for corp local. Looks good, therefore the answer is yes. Now we will look at statement 3, which uses app VM3. From app VM3, web server 2 corp local resolves to the IP. So let's go back to app VM3. And app VM3, if we look, is having a net B. So app VM3 can resolve web server to corp local because it shares the same custom DNS server that hosts the zone. So just like the previous statement, it is also yes. We'll log this as the final answers. Alrighty, now let's look at this question. Please feel free to pause this video. We'll see the statements here. So we got policy X can be applied to data subnet. Alright, now let's look at this question. Please feel free to pause this video. These are the statements available. I'll go one step back once again if you are done with these statements. Here is the first page. Let's have a look. Let's again go back here, and the statement 1 says policy X can be applied to data subnet. So we got to compare the location here. The trick here is the location or the region. So policy X cannot be applied to data subnet because they are in different region. So how do we know it? Policy X, if we look here in net gamma, which is central US, it's mentioned, right? Policy X central US. And for data subnet, let's go one step back. Here we go with the data subnet, and here we have the net beta. Net beta is in East Asia, right? So the different region, therefore the answer is no. Now let's move on to statement 2. It says only store A and store B can be accessed from net beta. So this statement is false because store A, store B and store C can be accessed from all three can be accessed from net beta, since net beta has a Microsoft storage service endpoint. If we look here, net beta Microsoft storage service endpoint is there, therefore the answer is no. Now let's move to the last statement, which says only store B can be accessed from net gamma. This looks good because only store B can be accessed from net gamma because policy X is scoped to net gamma and store B is in the same region. So please note policy X is in the central US. Now let's compare the region for store B, whether they are in the same region or not. And here if you look, store B, it's in the same region, right? Central US it's mentioned. So again, central US looks good. Net gamma, here it's mentioned central US, and we got store B as central US again. So same region, answer is yes. We'll log this as our final answers. Alright, let's look at this brainstorming question. Please feel free to pause this video, and here we got the statements here. Let's move on to first statement. It says app server 2 can stabilize a network connection to app server 1. So if you look here, there are no route exist from app server 2 to the virtual appliance. So traffic to app server 1 is blocked. So the answer is first one is no. Now let's move on to the statement 2. It says if a data node 1 is part of app server 2 can still stabilize a network connection to app server 1. So let's go back. So if you look here, DB node shutdowns doesn't affect routing. App server 2 still lacks a valid part to app server 1. Therefore, the answer is no again, for the same reason, just like statement 1. Now let's move on to the last statement, which is app server 1 can stabilize a network connection to app server 2. So if you look, app server 1 uses default VNet routing to reach app server 2, since no custom route overrides it. Therefore, for the last one, the answer is yes. We'll log this as our final answer. So please don't go away. Let's meet in our next part of the series.